Welcome to our third webinar dedicated to the imaging capabilities with the James Webb Space Telescope. So please, as a reminder, mute yourself during the meeting, except unless you want to ask some question. But before we start, we would like to remind you that the call for proposal has been issued last week. So it's available on JDocs. So for the cycle 1, 6,000 hours will be available and in 3 categories. So the small, medium, and large programs, 24 hours, below 75 hours and above. So the science justification will actually be quite long. It will require 4 pages for the small program and up to 5 pages for the medium and large program. So don't start writing a proposal just a few days before the deadline. So a lot of details are available on JDocs for different processes, so please check this out. All right. So today, Loic and I will start by giving you a recap of the different capabilities to do some imaging with the telescope. And we will continue by a live demo of a real science case, and we'll go through each step using the different tools that we already introduced in the second webinar. So just some recap. So James Webb offers a very large wavelength coverage for imaging, so from 0.6 all the way up to 29.8 micron. So using NIRCam and MIRI. NIRISS also has an imaging mode, but it will only be used for parallel or support observations. So the prime imager of James Webb is our NIRCam and MIRI. So another way of viewing the different instruments is to look at the field of views. So NIRCam has 2 fully redundant modules with a very large gap in between. Each module actually observes simultaneously a blue and a long wavelength channels. The blue channels is actually recorded on 4 individual detectors called SCAs, and there are gaps in between SCAs, as you can see here in blue. On the other hand, the long wavelength channels is recorded on a single detector without any gaps. So the blue channel is sampled at Nyquist beyond 2 microns, and the red channel is sampled at Nyquist beyond 4 microns. So you might want to use jittering to improve as we will see in a minute, jittering to improve the sampling. So NIRISS is similar to the long wavelength detector on NIRCam, so same field of view, 2 by 2 arc minute, same pixel scale as well. So MIRI has a rectangular field of view with a size of about half the one of a single module on NIRCam, and it is sampled at Nyquist beyond 7 microns. So jittering, as I said, is highly recommended for observation with James Webb to improve the spatial coverage of the field of view, but also to improve the data processing through the cosmetics, the background, but also to improve the PSF sampling. So a lot of jittering patterns have been designed for the different instruments, especially for NIRCam. So the jittering pattern of NIRCam have been specified in 2 categories or families. So the primary leaders, designed to fill in the different gaps in the field of view, and the secondary leaders designed to improve the PSF sampling. For MIRI, the different jittering patterns have been optimized for different strategies, so snapshot, deep observations, but also for different target morphologies, so point source compact or extended sources. And they have been highly inspired by the Spitzer observations. So it's important to understand that jittering with very large steps can require multiple guide star acquisition, so an observation can be broken into several visits. So if this happens, it will induce very large overheads. So please keep this in mind when designing your observations. So let's start to dig into the details. So the NIRCam primary jittering. So there, if you observe with the 2 modules of NIRCam, you might want to fill in the gap in between the 2 modules. So to do that, you will have to use the full pattern. So actually there are 2 patterns, the full and the full box. The full box have been very recently designed, and they are more efficient than the full one in terms of efficiency by minimizing the motion of the telescope. So they have been designed to fill in the gap in the two modules, but also to cover a very large field of view and to be used in conjunction with the mosaic. So here in the image, I basically show 3 examples using different points, so 2 points, 4 points, and 6 points. And as you see, the darker the color means that the exposure will be deeper in this region. So as you see, depending on your choice of pattern, the field of view might be non-uniformly covered by the observations. On the contrary, if you observe a smaller target that fits into a single module, so less than 2 arc-minutes in diameter, you will have to use the intra-module dithering pattern, so designed to fill in the gaps between the 4 SEA in the blue channel of NIRCam. So again, very recently, the module X and the module box have been designed to be more efficient than the intra-module one. They exist with different points and they provide different coverage. But basically, if you want a very uniform squared coverage of the field of view while filling the gaps, the intra-module box is the most efficient one. And finally, for objects smaller than a single SEA on NIRCam, so for objects smaller than 64 arcsecond diameter, you will have to use the intra-SEA pattern. So this pattern exists with 3 sizes, depending on the object size, obviously, and with different points. So here's an example of the different coverage that are offered by these modes. And finally, so there is the secondary dithering pattern. So as I said, designed to improve the PSF sampling below 2 micron in the blue channel and below 4 micron in the red channel of NIRCam. So they exist with 1 up to 64 points, but to improve the sampling, actually only the first 1 to 9 points pattern are useful. So the final sampling is provided by the 9-point pattern, providing a sampling of 3 times the native resolution of NIRCam. Beyond that limit, you will only improve the flat field mitigation and the back pixel rejection. All right, moving on to MIRI. So MIRI has very different dithering patterns. So the first one is the rouleau. So they exist in 3 sizes and they have been optimized basically for unresolved or barely resolved targets. There's also the more standard 4 points pattern. So there are a lot of options here. So several options designed for the smallest filter wavelength in MIRI, but also for point sources, and so other options for extended sources and longer wavelength. There are also options for subarrays. So actually there is a list of all the patterns available in this, for this pattern on JDocs. It's an Excel spreadsheet that you want to check out for more details. There's also the cycling dithering pattern. So here the pattern is drawn from a random Gaussian distribution with 3 sizes and up to 311 points. The user can start from anywhere in the distribution up to any limit, basically, below that threshold. Yes, that's it. And then finally, there is the 2-point dithering pattern, so for point sources, and it's very like noting the telescope at 2 positions to perform a background sky subtraction. All right, so that's it for the dithering. So I will also go back to the readout modes and the jargon on James Webb. So to remind you, an observation is made of several exposures. An exposure is made of several integrations or ramp, during which the photons are collected onto the detectors. So during a ramp, the frames are read out, which is called a frame. It's possible to average several frames into a single group or to skip some frame during the integration. So basically the philosophy behind this jargon is that there is a limit in the data volumes that can be downloaded per day from James Webb, which is 58 gigabytes per day through 2 windows. So there have been several modes that have been designed basically to minimize the data volumes required during a day of observation with James Webb. Because just to remind you, there are 4 detectors. There are a lot of detectors, and they are very large on NIRCam, MIRI, and all the instruments. So the data volume can become very quickly very large. So this is especially true for NIRCam if you want to image using the 2 modules in the 2 channels at the same time. You will very quickly fill up the entire data volume limit. So there have been 9 modes that have been designed at the readout pattern. So their name actually are quite obvious. For the rapid and the bright one, those are modes enabling a observation of very bright source for a shallow observation, up to the deep modes, which have been designed basically to do very long, very deep integrations. So as you can see here, these modes differ in the maximum number of groups during a ramp, but also the number of frames that are skipped during an integration. So it's up to you then. There is a trade-off between the number of frames that you want to skip to have a better cosmic ray rejection, but you might also want to keep the largest number of frames to have a better sensitivity. So basically, if you're interested in a very high SNR for your observation, for a given mode, choose the ones which provide the highest number of frames, which are those here. So I can imagine that it can be very difficult to figure out which mode is the best for observation. So there are 2 ways to handle that. The first one is to use the ETC. You design your observation and you play with the different readout modes and you select the one which provides the highest SNR. Or there is another option. Actually, in JWST, there is a table that was made by Roberto Elar in 2010, which for a given source flux and requested integration, it will give you the readout mode that provides the highest SNR and the number of groups. So say, for example, here I have a very bright target, so I see that the rapid mode is preferred over all the other ones. So check this table, it's very complete, and actually this is the one we used today. All right, for MIRI and NIRISS, the story is much easier. So for MIRI, there is a single readout mode available for the imaging capability, so which is the fast mode in which each frame is kept during the integration. For NIRISS, the NIRISS rapid is very similar to the fast mode, so each frame is kept during the integration. There is no skip. And there is also the NIRISS mode designed for frame sources in which 4 frames are averaged together in a single group. All right, there are also subarrays, which are available on a different instrument. So these are used for if you have small targets or very bright targets or very bright background. So NIRCam, there are different options. And NIRCam is a bit special because depending on the source morphology, the subarray are different. So in this sketch, you can see that for an extended source, it will be placed in the center of the detectors and the field of view. So basically right in between the different gaps in the blue channel. On the contrary, if you have a point source, it will be put in a corner of a single ACA. So basically, the subarray will push the saturation limit toward a fainter, brighter magnitude, and the effect can be quite important. For MIRI especially, so the full, if you observe beyond 25 micron in a full frame, you will be saturated. So that's why there is a subarray called Bright Sky, which will improve the saturation limit by a factor of 3. And for NIRISS, again, there are several subarrays. All right, so we will just one last slide before moving on to the demo. So coordinated parallels. So you will be able to have access to some parallel observation with James Webb. So to basically, so the 2 instruments will be used in parallel and they will observe a different part in the sky. So those are the different modes available. So, but during a parallel, you have to remember that there will be a prime instrument and a secondary instrument. The prime instrument will drive the jittering pattern and the maximum exposure time. The secondary instrument will have to follow these requirements. And finally, there is the mosaicing capabilities, which is also available. So for If you want to image very large field of view, you might want to use some mosaic. So the mosaic will require very large steps between different observations. So they will be split into different visits. And the distance might vary on your on the galactic latitude of your target. So check out the JDocs for more information on that. All right, so far so good. Do you have any question before moving on to the demo? I guess it's a no.
Just a quick question. Could you just dither between the two modules then? So if can I put the target?
Oh, do you want to dither between the two modules?
Yeah, so that way I can get sky subtraction, while I'm
no, that's not possible.
Oh.
Now the dithering will be made within with very small steps. The
Right.
largest can be 40 milliarc seconds. So those within a module.
Oh, okay. So what I mean is, so I could do a mini dither on one module, then at the end of that pattern, I can move to sky, move that module to sky.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So in the demo, actually, we'll do a background observation with MIRI, so you will see exactly that.
Thank you.
Any other question? All right. So the science case actually, so we will go through every step here. So we'll design the science project, we'll go through the ETC, the APT, and we will mimic a submission, basically. So today we are interested in a photometric measurement of the nearby ultraluminous infrared galaxy, ARP 220. So we are interested in unresolved measurement of the surface brightness fluctuation and the radial stellar population gradient in the core of the galaxy, but also in the disk. So to do that, we will use NIRCam and MIRI in the imaging mode using a set of filters that probe the stellar population here, basically, and the dust properties, so those 2 and those 3 for MIRI. So we require a sine-to-nose ratio of 100 in the core of the galaxy, so around, say, 5 arcseconds around the center, which corresponds basically to the core of the galaxy. And we are also interested in the halo, so we'll require this sine-to-nose ratio of 5 at larger distance. So, all right, let's start. So if you want to try to follow us using your own laptop, feel free to do so. If you're going too fast, just stop, relax, and go back to the recorded webinar on the website. So to have a sense of the observation that we want, I will open EtherSky. And with EtherSky, I will look for ARP 220. So this is the optical image. So as I said, we want to do NIRCam observation. So I will click on the small telescope and then NIRCam. So here, basically, we have the 2 modules by default. So we see that the target is actually small enough to fulfill a single module of NIRCam. So we don't need to have the 2 modules. So I will go back to the telescope and select only the imaging B, which is the module used on its own. So here we go. We have the galaxy that fulfills the entire field of view of a single detector. We also see that we don't need to have a specific orient to be able to observe the galaxy. So that is good. It means that the observation we won't have any constraint on the orientation of the telescope. We will also add MIRI. So those observations won't be used in parallel because we're interested in the same field of view with MIRI. So I've added MIRI here, and we now see the rectangular field of view of the imaging part of the detector on MIRI. So here we see that the galaxy might be a bit larger than the field of view of MIRI. There is some halo here. So we might want to do a mosaic using 2 tiles, so 2 visits to add another observation here. lastly, so as we see here, the galaxy basically fit the entire field of view of MIRI. And MIRI, as we said, the background can be very high. So in this case, we might want to do some observation of the background on a different part of the sky. So let's use EtherSky to use a sky region empty of free of sources. So here around this position, basically we might be able to put MIRI and to have a good background observation. So I will write down the coordinate of this position, which is shown on the upper left. So which is 15, 34, 51 in right ascension, and 23, 33, 23 in declination. So that would be useful to design the background target of my observation. All right, so we have a good sense of what we will do. So we'll move on with the ETC, with Loic, actually, to design the observations.
So Julien,
yes,
could you turn that MIRI by 90 degrees? Is it, how do you, if
so
I
if you want to do that, click on the telescope, go to the MIRI settings, and there is a rotation.
Yeah.
So you can rotate, say, 23, here we see.
Yeah. I was just thinking, probably. Yeah. Perfect, thank you.
Welcome. So let's move on to the ETC with Loic. So I'll stop showing my screen.
Yeah, okay, so hello everybody. I'll share mine now. Okay, I'm gonna try not to speak too fast because there's there's a lot to cover in the ETC actually. Okay, so we'll go to the exposure time calculator of James Webb on the web here. And I log in with my ST account. Okay, there you go. I'll expand this a little bit more. Is it small? Is it very small? I can make it bigger here. Okay. So I'll actually create a new workbook to do the calculations. All right. So we mentioned that we basically have two science goals here. Okay, we have the imaging of the central core of ARP-220, the 5x5 arcsecond, but we also have we want to see the stellar population far at, say, 60 arcseconds from the center. So I'll start with the first goal. So for this, I will create a source. So there's already by default a source here, but I'll create one, and that will be my core. So I call it core. Whoops. Call it my core. And I will select its spectral energy distribution, its spectrum. It's convenient. There's one in the actually library of the ETC. For ARP-220, it's this one. So we have an SED that we can see here. Okay, we don't need to renormalize it to any scale because the absolute flux is all right already. So we'll model this this core as a Sirsic profile, an extended source, Sirsic profile with a Sirsic index of 1, and we'll make it 1 arcsecond semi-major axis wide, okay? We'll save this. And so now we have our first, the core that's created, and we'll put it in a scene. Actually, there's already a scene by default. Source 1 is in there, so we already have our scene set up. And we see the core of ARP-220, and it's the right size. And remember, one thing we want to do, obviously the core will have a very high signal-to-noise ratio just with a short exposure, but we want to know, we're interested in what happens up to, say, 5 arcseconds, so maybe over there. And the ETC only produces a small postage stamp. By default is very small. And as soon as you enlarge it, the calculations take a lot of time. So you want to keep things small, the window small here, but still bigger than what we have here. So in order to artificially enlarge it, we'll create another source, a dummy source, okay? So I'll call it dummy. And this one should become obvious to you why it's there. So its spectrum is not very important because I'm going to renormalize it to 0 flux. So it's a fake star, no flux actually. Its shape is a point, and I'll save it, and I'll include it in my scene. Okay, by default it comes at the center, but the trick here that I'm going to do is offset that source to a position, say 3, 3 here, and save, and you can immediately see that suddenly the source scene, the scene has been enlarged, and it's almost 8 by 8 arcsecond on the side. So now we can encompass almost what we wanted. So you see that the core is at the center, and we want to reach about here at 5 arcseconds on the side. So one further trick in order to get that distance is to actually move the core on the scene and put it on the side. So I'll go back to my core and move it. Offset it by 2.5 arcseconds. And you see that our core has moved on the left, and we can now have access to the position, the 5 arcseconds from the core, where we want to calculate our signal-to-noise ratio. So this is all good. Okay, the next step is actually I'm going to rename that scene, give it a meaningful name. So it's going to be core plus dummy. That's almost meaningful. Okay, so that's the name. So now we're ready to actually perform a calculation. So we're going to move to the calculation tab. And when you do a calculation, the first thing you do is actually select an instrument with one of its observing mode. So we're going to start with MIRI, observing with MIRI. Okay, so the calculation was created. We're going to make sure that we are observing the proper scene, core plus dummy. We're going to select the filter that we want to look through. It's the 770 filter, wide. And then we're going to select the strategy that we want to observe the target with. Okay, so that's where it becomes a bit tricky, but you can follow along. First thing we want to do is basically perform signal-to-noise calculation at a specific position, 5 arcseconds from our core. Remember, our core is minus 2.5, so we'll specify, we'll do the calculation 2.5 arcsecond on the right. So next thing is we have to select, what is the size of the aperture that we use for our calculation. If it were a point source, you could simply have a large circle and integrate all of the energy within that circle. But here we're dealing with surface brightness. Okay, so it becomes, what you want to get is the signal-to-noise ratio in a pixel, a detector pixel, and those are much smaller. A detector pixel of MIRI is 110 milliarcseconds, so it's 0.11. Okay, but here the ETC can only create circular apertures. So you need to trick the ETC into thinking that you know, it's observing a square. So you have to actually use the half of a pixel size as the radius, 0.055, but not quite, because a circle covers less surface area than a square. So you have to multiply by actually square root of 4 over pi. So that's 1.13, and that results in 0.062 arc seconds. So here, my aperture has the equivalent circular surface as a detector pixel of MIRI. Okay, it's a trick, but it's one way to do it. And I'll show you another more clever way after that. Okay, the next thing to consider is when you perform an aperture photometry is you have to subtract a background. Again, if it were a point source, I would select an annulus and subtract the background around the source. But here, I don't want to subtract an annulus because it's actually the signal that I would subtract the population of stars around. So instead, I want to select what would be a constant subtraction. Say you observed a blank field on the side, as we will, then you can subtract this level here, and that's what I use. So so that's the setup of the strategy. Okay, the next thing I want to set up is actually the background level. Okay, the background level is so for MIRI, it's important to consider. The background is the zodiacal light. But at about 14 microns, the most important background is the actual thermal emission from the telescope and instrument itself, actually the telescope itself. Here for our configuration, I already checked that our background corresponds to roughly the median, okay? So I will not go through the pain of getting that, but actually what I can show you, there is a tool for dealing with backgrounds with James Webb. Okay, it's a tool. It's the first time we talk about it on those webinars. So it's I already installed it on my computer. I'll show you in a second. Okay, it's called JWST Backgrounds, and I'm going to give it the RA deck of my target and the wavelength that I'm interested in. And it's producing two plots. Okay, it's what I meant here. It's what I just said before, that it's the background intensity as a function of wavelength and for the middle of the year here. And there's the red component, that's the thermal from the telescope, and the black is the total, and the orange is the zodiacal light. So the second plot will give you, for that location, RA deck, and that wavelength, when is it during the year that you have the least background? Okay, this tool can be important if you want to aim for MIRI observations and aim for a time when you have the lowest background possible. So you would see here that the background dips below some threshold at about the 90 days, so end of March. And so that's between end of March and say, well, 180, so June. That's when you would like to observe this target. So I already checked that my target can be observed for the median background for this target. All right, so the final thing to consider with this observation or this calculation is the detector setup. How long is the exposure time? How many integrations I'm going to perform? Well, we know that we are looking at a very, very bright target. The core of ARP 220 is a magnitude close to 10, I believe, so it's very bright. So we're going to use the fast mode. Well, of course, we're going to use, well, we're going to see, you know, if we can, if we saturate with the smallest number of groups that we can do with MIRI. MIRI requires that we do at least 5 groups minimum. and we'll see if we saturate with this setup. Okay, I forgot something. This number is okay. I forget. Okay, here the normalization of my flux, it should not be normalized because it's already flux calibrated. So I should do not normalize. And I repeat the calculation. Okay, so we see that we get a signal to noise ratio of 16, but that's not what we're interested yet in. We see a warning. Indeed, there is, on the saturation map, there is a red. So some pixels are saturated. We see the warning here. So we have to go back to the detector setup, and actually we did the best we could with the full detector. So we have no choice but to reduce the exposure time by picking a smaller subarray. And bright sky is the one we get. And I already checked that with this setup and a group of 10, I will not saturate. The next thing to consider is the number of exposures and integration. So the number of exposures is like the number of ditters. So here I know that I'm going to do a ditter pattern with 4 ditters. So I'm gonna already enter 4 here. And the number of integration is TBD. We don't know yet, so we have to run the calculations. Okay, so we have about a signal to noise of about 38. All right, so we probably would need to increase that by some factor to reach 100 as we intended. And that's here that I will show you a different way of actually measuring the signal to noise. It's actually designed this way. We should have been more clever and done it the first time. You just look at the map here. This is an actually simulated image of the signal to noise ratio, and you can actually download this map. So that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, I'm going to download the map and see the image, open the image, and see the result. So that's my core at -2. Here in the WCS, -2.5 arc seconds as a value of 400 signal to noise. If I move 5 arc seconds on the side here at 2.5, I get 28. Okay, so I need to increase by a factor of about 4 the signal to noise. So a factor of 4 in signal to noise means 16 times the exposure time. Okay, so I'll go to the integration and I'll put 16, and let's see what we get. And I can already hear people saying, but how come the signal to noise here that I tricked the ETC into calculating is not the same as the one reported on the map? That's a very good question. I don't have the answer to that. But the most reliable thing is the map. Okay, so this is no longer useful. So I see that the signal to noise has reached more than 100. If I download this new map, I should reach what I wanted. Okay. So zoom fit. And so if I go at 2.5, I see that I get about 113. Great, I got my signal to noise ratio, and that worked. So that's how I'm basically done for one filter of MIRI. Okay, so it took me, I don't know how many minutes. I'm not going to repeat all of the MIRI filters that way, but it's enough to say that if you wanted to do the 2 other filters, you would copy the calculation here. Okay, then you would go and modify the instrument setup by changing the filter. You would put the proper number of groups, proper number of integration, and you would calculate. And I conveniently got the numbers right. I get also a similar signal-to-noise ratio at 5 arc seconds, and the same for the third filter. Okay, so I'll move then to the NIRCam filter. And NIRCam, as remind you, 2 simultaneous channels observed at the same time, the blue and the red. So we'll start with the blue channel.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question? This
yes.
is Wilson. How did you know that the number of groups would change when you changed the filter on MIRI? Is there a document somewhere that describes those limits?
Well, first, it's because I've practiced today. I've tried to get the proper group to work. Okay, so normally what I would have done is explore, basically try different numbers and see what I get. There are good practices for what to do for an observation, and there's on the JWST there's a good practice document for each instrument. So yeah, so I don't know if that answers the question, or you.
That's okay. Thanks.
Loic?
If I may. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, you could also mention here the expand feature in the ETC, because that allows you to change the number of groups. And
that's true. So if I wanted to, so let's go back to the to this first calculation and do an expand group. Okay, because say I don't know. Or expand integration. I know that group I cannot change a lot because it will saturate. So I can change the number of integrations. So I would take a starting value, say a step size of 5, and say 5 iterations. Then it would create those 5 calculations with different integrations. Okay,
yeah,
so
I wanted to comment, and you partly inserted my comment, Loic. It's to answer your question, Chris. It's one thing that you have to watch out, obviously, with the number of groups, is that you don't saturate. So that was shown at the beginning. So, and that expand option allows you to explore various time area space.
Yeah. Okay, so I will actually delete those calculation, or maybe not. It will take time. So I will jump directly to NIRCam. I will do a long wave imaging. Okay, so I'll start to make sure I have the proper scene, proper background, the instrument. Okay, I want to use the 444 filter. The strategy, again, I'm going to position myself 2.5 arc seconds on the side. The NIRCam pixels are smaller, so here for the long wave, the calculations of are 0.36, so that's the radius that produces a one detector area. And again, use no ring for a subtraction. And I'll use, it's very bright, so I'll use a rapid readout pattern. I'll try to keep the full detector and check if I saturate or not. Something else here with NIRCam is that we're going to perform again a Ditter pattern, but 2 kinds of Ditter pattern, the primary and the secondary. The first Ditter pattern is going to be 4, so we should put 4 here. But also there's going to be sub-Ditter pattern 2 by 2, so that means 4 times 4, 16 exposures minimum, and we'll have to know what is the integration that we need. Okay, so we'll do the calculation. Okay, so we see that we get a warning. Yeah, again, we saturate here. So not a good news. So we'll drop this to 5. And it's green, so we're okay. We're not saturating anymore. The signal-to-noise ratio is close to 100. The actual number that I get is, if I perform the thing is 2. With 2, you get 100 of signal-to-noise ratio. Okay, so basically I'm set for the long wave channel observation. I'll move to the short wave. So remember, we do 2 simultaneously. So for the short wave, I will have to use similar groups and integration and exposure as the long channel, because for the 2, they are done simultaneously. They need to use the same readout pattern, the same number of group, integration, and exposures. So we'll see how 5 groups works with the short wave. Short wave has smaller pixels, so simulations and calculations take longer to execute. So you see it takes a bit more time. So we'll set it up. The scene is the proper one. Background is medium. The instrument setup is 115. That's the filter I want. Okay, I want a rapid readout pattern, full, and we said that we have groups of 5s, otherwise we saturate with the long channel. The strategy again is to move the aperture there, and the pixels of the short wave are very small, so this mimics a square pixel in terms of size. All right, so we'll go to the detector. We need, again, we'll do 16 exposure because it's 4 large jitter plus 4 small subjitter. And then we'll play around with integration. So if I just ran this with a single integration with that setup, I won't get the signal to noise I want. Remember, for the long wave, 2 integration in that setup were enough to get 100. But for the short wave, it's not going to be enough. Computing. Okay, there we have 25. So in fact, we would require, let me see my notes, we would require 14 integration, okay? So remember, 14 is more than the 2 for the long wave. So that means that what we'll do is use 14 integration, but for both, which means for the long wave, we'll have a signal-to-noise ratio much higher than we require. And when you think about it, it's normal that we have different integrations because we're requesting, you see, so we have about 84 of signal-to-noise, close to 100. So for the long wave channel has larger pixel size, and we require signal-to-noise ratio per pixel. And that's why for the short wave, it's a much more difficult constraint, and you need more integrations. Okay, so I'm basically done with the calculation. You can repeat this for the other pair of short wave and long wave for this science program, the same principle. And that's it. So maybe there's a question I could answer. Okay, so I'll pass the.
Lloyd?
Yes?
Just a quick question. This is Karun. So when you do the micro dither, we saw that the imaging depth varies across the field, the field of view. So the image that you download, the signal to noise image, does it take that into account? So if I go.
No, it doesn't. So
okay.
The image that I downloaded assumes that you're always at the same location.
Okay.
So in that sense, you're being optimistic about the observation.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering. So what would be the factor I have to take into account to
Well,
yeah.
What I would do in this case is look at the examples of dithering patterns and see the depth achieved for different locations on the sky, on the mosaic, and probably you'll have like 75% of the surface is covered fully with at all dither positions, and some fraction is going to be covered only half of the exposure time. So that way you can estimate, you know, how much you lose. My own personal preference is to have small dithers so that you keep your coverage, the percentage of full coverage high, but that's only my taste.
And again, just to remind myself, so you cannot, there is no user-defined dither. It's just a canned dither pattern that you have to use. That's
space astronomy. Yes, pretty much every space mission has pre-programmed observing modes like that. Yeah,
understandable. Yeah,
but I mean, with MIRI, you can still choose your Rouleau dithering and pick at which number you start. And there's like 311 positions. So in that sense, it's almost like a user.
Correct. That's only for MIRI. You know, I'm thinking about NIRCam.
Right. Only for MIRI.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so
it's Victor Halak. If you could please, will you show something with NIRSpec observation? How we can deal with NIRSpec as well, spectral observations?
Yes, we will. But at the next webinar in 2 weeks, it would be nice to show it. But it's gonna be, we're gonna dedicate to spectroscopy in 2 weeks, and for that we'll do NIRSpec, ETC, and APT.
Thank you.
Okay, so stop share. So I'll pass the control to Julien.
All right, so we will basically finish the proposal by going to the APT. I'll try to be efficient, but not too fast. So I will open the APT and I will create a new James Webb proposal here. And we will basically fill in the different box with the settings that we have just obtained with the ETC. So I will start by creating my target. So I will use the fixed target resolver and I will look for HARP 220. It is here. I will expand the target and I will complete the information. So HARP 220 is a galaxy, is actually an ultra-luminous infrared galaxy or a Seyfert galaxy. And okay, we have the position here and it is an extended source. All right. For MIRI, we saw in the ESA sky and actually during the discussion that we will need to observe a background field. So I will go back to the target and create a new fixed target because I know the position to which I want to observe my background. So I will give actually a clever name for those targets. It will be easier for you to keep track of things, but also for the reviewer at the STSI. So these targets will be used for calibration and actually to calibrate the sky background. All right, and the coordinate was 15, 34, 41, and plus 23, 33, 23. All right, so that would be my background target. I will create now my observation folder. So we'll start with MIRI. I will click on observation 1. So again, please put some obvious name, which will be very helpful for you actually. So that will be MIRI imaging. So the instrument I will use is MIRI, template MIRI imaging on HARP 220. Subarray, we saw with the ETC that we need to use the bright sky subarray. dithering patterns. So if you go to JDocs, and as I said at the beginning, so for extended sources, the recommended dithering pattern is the 4 points. So I will use the 4 points. And as you see here, there's a recommended starting number and number of sets. So if you go to JDocs and download this table here, we have all the different patterns that are available for MIRI. And if we go to the 4 points extended sources, we see that there are 11 options, 10 options actually. So you might decide which one you want to use. So they have different positions in the field of view, and the ones which are centered in the field of view is the set number 5 and 6. So we want to dither around the center using the same pattern. Okay, we want one pattern. All right, so I have my dithering pattern from here. And I will now add my feeders. So there is the 770 with 10 groups, as we saw in the ATC with Loic. We will do 16 integration, and we will use the dithering pattern number 1. So we have 4 exposures. All right, I will add now the other features. So 1130, we saw that we need, so basically with the ETC, we needed 80 groups with 9 integration, same dither pattern. And I will add the third feeder, so 1280. Here we saw on the ETC that we need 11 groups and 9 integration to reach the same signal-to-noise ratio. All right. So we have the dithering pattern and the feeders. So we saw with Sky that we needed basically to do some mosaic to cover the entire galaxy with MIRI, but since we now have a subarray, which is half the size of the entire detector, we will need to double the size of the mosaic. So to do so, we will click on the mosaic properties, and I will do a 2x2 mosaic, so using 4 tiles. And we can go to view in Aladdin. It will open a new window. I can add a DSS background. All right, I can zoom in. And now I see my mosaic. And if I play with the little green cursor here, playing with the transparency of the field, I now see the galaxy behind and what's the galaxy look like, which is good. But actually, you might be able to change the overlap between the different tiles on the row and the columns. So say I want to increase the overlap, 60%. And now I see that my mosaic is much smaller. I can also play with the position of the row or the columns to change the mosaic, the shape of the mosaic. And now I see what it looks like in APT, in Aladdin. But I don't want to do any shift because I'm okay with the square. So I will keep 0 and I want a taper, 10% of overlap. All right. Profile here. So if we expand actually the MIRI observation, we see that the observation has been broken, split it in 4 visits. So a single visit will be done for a single pointing, so a mosaic tile. And if you go to the special requirement, we see here that actually there is an implicit requirement for which the observation will be done at the same position angles so that the mosaic will have the same orient. All right. Remember, we need a background observation with MIRI, so the background has to be exactly the same as the science imaging. So I will duplicate this template and I will call it background to be clever, but I will change the target with my background position. And if I click on MIRI, so for the background, I might not need to dither at all, or maybe just to use another dithering pattern to remove positive sources that could be in the field of view. So I will only use the 2 points dither here. And also for the background I don't need to do some mosaic, so I will go back to the one by one. All right, so for the background, we want the observations to be scheduled right after the science observation. So we will add a special requirement in timing, and we will group the observation of the background with the one of the target in a non-interruptible sequence. Those two checkboxes are mandatory for a background observation. I will click on OK. With that design, it means that actually the entire mosaic and the background observation will be observed at a single time. So my background will be used for all the tiles here in my mosaic. Otherwise, the visits could be done anywhere during any time during the year, actually. All right, I will now add the NIRCam observation. So I will create a new template with NIRCam. I will use the NIRCam template imaging using the ARP220. We are only interested in the single module, so which will be module B. Subarray would be 4. Jittering pattern. So as I said, we want to image the field of view the more uniformly as possible. So the intramodule box is the best here, using 4 points, and we want a sub-dealer pixel dealer pattern with 4 position to double the native resolution of NIRCam. So I will add the filters. So again, simultaneous observation. So the 90 will be observed in parallel with the 326 using the rapid mode, 10 groups as we saw with the ETC, and 6 integration. I will add the other set, which is the 115, which will be observed with the 444, same mode as we saw, 5 groups, but 14 integration. All right. So actually, I don't know. Oh, I don't know why. Surprise. All right, that is a good question. Actually, I don't know why. Okay, I'm a bit surprised by this result, but since we are running out of time, we'll, sorry about that, we're imagining that there is no red cross here, so we can see the schedulability of our observation. So we can click on the visit planner for all observation and update the schedulability. So this is ongoing. Can take some time. All right, this is running. All right, so we have the window. So actually we see that the observation are schedulable during 2 months, so which is, and then there's another period here, which is actually okay. We also want to compute the total observing time. So by optimizing the observation, so actually there is a tool on the APT, which is called the Run Smart Accounting. So if you click on that, the APT will optimize the observation, the jittering strategy, and the movement of the filter wheels to minimize the overheads. So if we go back to the form editor, and on the proposal information, we have here the boxes to be filled in with the title, abstract, and we see the result of the smart accounting. So we have a proposal requiring about 10 hours for science observation with a total charge time, including overheads, of about 16 hours. So the proposal is quite good in terms of efficiency. All right, and then we want to fill in the different categories and to attach the PDF, but also to add the COIs and so on. So once you're done, you can click on Submit here to submit your proposal, and you're done. All right. Do you have any question? It went a bit fast, I know.
Where is the save button, Julien? I'm just looking at the screen.
Which button?
The
save.
Save, sauvegarder.
Where is that?
Let me see. Yeah, it's in the file.
Oh, under file, yeah.
In the file.
So that's it. Basically, you have all what you need to submit the proposal. So, but you don't want to have any red cross actually to be able to submit. So you have to figure out which are those warnings. If you should click on this, but we'll imagine that it's okay. Any question?
And can you set permissions so that several people can work on this simultaneously?
On the APT?
Yeah.
I don't think so. No. For the EDC, it is possible to share your workbook with your collaborators, but for the APT, it's not possible.
Okay. And does the ETC permit a file save as well?
You can download the different tables and images, but you won't be able to save the settings that you put in.
Okay, so you have to get it done one shot.
Well, you can save in the ETC. You can save your what's called workbook if you have your MyST account.
Yeah.
Okay.
Strongly recommended.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So that is between cycles, you can still use the same what you used before.
Exactly. Exactly.
Perfect.
But of course, you can save the APT file and share it with your collaborators.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Or any requests for future? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, because you asked about, can you put this one up somewhere where we can download and play with it? The one that you created just now.
Sure, we will put it on the website. And if we want to have access to the workbook of the EDC, just send you a mail and we'll share the workbook with you.
Yeah, and the same with the ETC as well. You know, just to have a starting point to kind of start working. Great, thank you.
And remember that the actual webinar is recorded, so you can always go back and go step by step. But that's a good point. We can share the actual workbook and the APT file.
And also for the ETC, there are CAN templates as well. If you are only beginning, you can select templates for, say, point source, imaging, point source, spectroscopy, and so on. And then it's a good starting point to learn to use the tool.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, so it's time to wrap up. So just to remind you, we will resume the 4th webinar in 2 weeks, so December 20, and we will focus on the single object spectroscopy, and we'll make a demo using NIRSpec. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, just fire us a mail. Thank you. Bye.